Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the NFP Podcast.
Hi, everyone.
We are continuing on with our encyclical reading. Today, we're in section 4. For those of you following along, Father and Mother as Educators. And the encyclical is The Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality, Guidelines for Education Within the Family. So before we start with that, I just want to give a little shout out and plug to our people over at Facts. They are doing, Facts is an organization, for those of you that are not aware of it. It's called Facts About Fertility, the Fertility Appreciation Collaborative to Teach the Science. And they are hosting a virtual conference on October 10th and 11th. Registration does close on the 6th. So sorry, I was a little late to become aware of this and then be able to advertise it for everyone. But if you register, we did get a discount code for you guys. So you will get 10% off your registration fee. But anyway, it's a lifestyle, women's lifestyle, and the impact of lifestyle on women's cycles conference. So it's going to feature content covering information along the lines of physical wellness and infertility, stress in the female cycle, nutrition for hormonal health, and the impact of sleep and exercise on fertility. So there's going to be some great speakers. Highly recommend attending if you can. Again, it's a virtual conference, so even if it's one of those things, sadly, I was telling Emily, my husband will be out of town, I believe, that weekend, but I think I might register and then just put my earbud in and ignore my children. Walk around the house with my earbud in and try to listen to the speakers. Just kidding. I won't totally ignore my children, but maybe a little bit. So anyway, check it out if you have time to listen, to tune in for any of it. Definitely it will be worthwhile. So that's, again, October 10th and 11th. It's the Facts virtual conference. And the code that they gave us for 10% off your registration is NFP Show 10. All one word and capitalized. So capital NFP SHOW 10. Okay, so now that that is done, let's get started. Section 4, Father and Mother as Educators. In granting married persons the privilege and great responsibility of becoming parents, God gives them the grace to carry out their mission adequately. Moreover, in the task of educating their children, parents are enlightened by two fundamental truths. First, that man is called to live in truth and love. Second, that everyone finds fulfillment through the sincere gift of self. As spouses, parents, and ministers of the sacramental grace of marriage, they are sustained from day to day by special spiritual energies received from Jesus Christ, who loves and nurtures his bride, the church. As husband and wife who have become one flesh through the bond of marriage, they share the duty to educate their children through willing collaboration nourished by vigorous mutual dialogue that has a new specific source in the sacrament of marriage, which consecrates them for the strictly Christian education of their children. That is to say, it calls upon them to share in the very authority and love of God the Father and Christ the Shepherd, and in the motherly love of the church. And it enriches them with wisdom, counsel, fortitude, and all the other gifts of the Holy Spirit in order to help the children in their growth as human beings and as Christians.
In the context of formation and chastity, fatherhood, motherhood also includes one parent who is left alone and adoptive parents. The task of a single parent is certainly not easy because the support of the other spouse and the role and example of a parent of the other sex is lacking. But God sustains single parents with a special love and calls them to take on this task with the same generosity and sensitivity with which they love and care for their children in other areas of family life.
Some other persons are called upon in certain cases to take the place of parents, those who take on the parental role in a permanent way. For instance, for orphans or abandoned children. They too have the task of educating children and young people in an overall sense, as well as in chastity, and they will receive the grace of their state of life to do this according to the same principles that guide Christian parents.
Parents must never feel alone in this task. The church supports and encourages them, confident that they can carry out this function better than anyone else. She also encourages those men or women who, often with great sacrifice, give children without parents a form of parental love and family life. In any case, all of them must approach this duty in a spirit of prayer, open and obedient to the moral truths of faith and reason that integrate the teaching of the church, and always seeing children and young people as persons, children of God and heirs to the kingdom of heaven.
The rights and duties of parents. Before going into the practical details of young people's formation in chastity, it's extremely important for parents to be aware of their rights and duties, particularly in the face of a state or a school that tends to take up the initiative in the area of sex education. The Holy Father, John Paul II, reaffirms this in Familiaris Consortio. The right and duty of parents to give education is essential, since it's connected with the transmission of human life. It is original and primary with regard to the educational role of others, on account of the uniqueness of the loving relationship between parents and children, and it is irreplaceable and inalienable, and therefore incapable of being entirely delegated to others or usurped by others, except in this case, as mentioned at the beginning, of physical or psychological impossibility.
This doctrine is based on the teaching of the Second Vatican Council and is also proclaimed by the Charter of the Rights of the Family. Since they have conferred life on their children, parents have their original, primary, and inalienable right to educate them. Hence, they have the right to educate their children in conformity with their moral and religious convictions, taking into account the cultural traditions of the family which favor the good and the dignity of the child. They should also receive from society the necessary aid and assistance to perform their educational role properly. The Pope insists upon the fact that this holds especially with regard to sexuality. Sex education, which is a basic right and duty of parents, must always be carried out under their attentive guidance, whether at home or in educational centers, chosen and controlled by them. In this regard, the Church reaffirms the law of subsidiarity, which the school is bound to observe when it cooperates in sex education, by entering into the same spirit that animates the parents.
The Holy Father adds, in view of the close links between the sexual dimension of the person and his or her ethical values, education must bring the children to a knowledge of and respect for the moral norms as the necessary and highly valuable guarantee for responsible personal growth in human sexuality. No one is capable of giving moral education in this delicate area better than duly prepared parents. The meaning of the parent's duty. This right also implies an educational duty. If, in fact, parents do not give adequate formation in chastity, they are failing in their precise duty. Likewise, they would also be guilty were they to tolerate immoral or inadequate formation being given to their children outside the home. Today, this task encounters a particular difficulty with regard to the dissemination of pornography through the means of social communication, instigated by commercial motives and breaking down adolescent sensitivity. This must call for two forms of concerned action on the parts of parents: preventative and critical education with regard to their children, and courageous denunciation to the appropriate authorities. Parents, as individuals or in associations, have the right and duty to promote the good of their children and demand from the authorities laws that prevent and eliminate the exploitation of the sensitivity of children and adolescents.
The Holy Father stresses this parental task and outlines guidelines and the objective in this regard. Faced with a culture that largely reduces human sexuality to the level of something commonplace, since it interprets and lives it in a reductive and impoverished way by linking it solely with the body and with selfish pleasure, The educational service of parents must aim firmly at a training in the area of sex that is truly and fully personal. For sexuality is an enrichment of the whole person, body, emotions, and soul, and it manifests its inmost meaning in leading the person to the gift of self in love.
We cannot forget, however, that we are dealing with a right and duty to educate, which, in the past, Christian parents carried out or exercised little. Perhaps this was because the problem was not as acute as it is today, or because the parent's task was in part fulfilled by the strength of prevailing social models and the role played by the church and the Catholic school in this area. It's not easy for parents to take on this educational commitment because today it appears to be rather complex and greater than what the family could offer. Also because, in most cases, it is not possible to refer to what one's own parents did in this regard. Therefore, through this document, the Church holds that it is her duty to give parents back confidence in their own capabilities and help them to carry out their task. So good, Emily.
Oh, Amy, wow.
Okay, so the first chunk, there's, if you're not following along, there's it's broken up into sections. So there's a section heading and then there's a subheading in this. And the first part is the main heading before we get to the subheading. I feel like it was a helpful confidence boost of the Lord has given you everything you need. The Lord's grace is there for you to tap into. And I thought about, Emily, times when I kind of feel oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this child? What direction are we supposed to go? What's happening here? And I get, I'm kind of thinking okay, Joey and I need to solve this situation or we need to figure out. And I forget, right? And I feel the Holy Spirit nudges to be ask me. Maybe I know. And it's oh, that's right. Lord, this is actually not my child. This is your child first. What are we supposed to do here? And that's really, I think, a good reminder that the Holy Spirit is really there to help guide us in our parenting.
It's very consoling, right? When we feel we don't have answers, because naturally our first instinct most times is just, how can I fix this? You want to fix things for your kids, especially if it's some sort of suffering, like a health ailment or, whatever the case may be. But yeah, this is just really beautiful. You have all of the gifts, and it just, in the specific ones, it enriches them with wisdom, counsel, fortitude, and all the other gifts of the Holy Spirit. I just love how it laid that out. It's beautiful.
I agree. Yeah. Very encouraging. And at the same time, I feel as good as a good parent is, the Church is also convicting, in the rights and duties of parents.
Very.
Yeah, I find it very, and Emily, I was reminded as we're reading this last couple, the paragraphs here, this was written in 1990 and they thought there was an issue.
1995. Yes.
And 1995. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought it was an issue then. They thought the culture was a little wacky then. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Now, this is even more applicable to today, yeah, this line in particular, I'm this was written in I thought 1990, but thank you for correcting me. 1995. Perhaps this was in paragraph 47. Perhaps this was because the problem was not as acute as it is today. And I'm oh, it was acute back then? Oh, or because the parent's task was in part fulfilled by the strength of prevailing social models. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it really resonated. Yeah, not to cut you off.
No, go for it.
That really resonated with me because if you think about 1995 and the last line of this little paragraph says, it's not possible to refer to what one's own parents did in this regard. So the parents at this time were born in the 50s, let's just say. Okay. So it's a completely different world even in 1995. Now we're 2 generations separated from that. And so now we have, in this sense, now we have the parents of the children now are our age. And depending on what education we got, which is very likely nothing,
right?
Perhaps nothing direct from the parents. Okay. Right. Then we're that much more removed from actual formation in this. And now you're thinking about your grandparents possibly having a handle on it. Well, as this is saying, a lot of times it wasn't even talked about directly because it was fulfilled just by the examples in the school. So there's really this huge shift of the people that just naturally understand this, part of our lives, like chastity, modesty, all these things because of just the way the culture was. Now you've got 2 generations later that don't even have perhaps proper examples in their life of what this even looks like. And then the parents that, without seeking and searching for the knowledge that the church gives us, are going to feel very much alone in trying to teach this to their kids,
And I feel like there's a trend in parenting, and I don't know if, I guess trend is not the right thing, because I don't know if it's a popular, like, conscious choice that some parents are making, but almost like a lack of who's the adult in the room. And that might be by mannerism, that might be by dress, like which one's the mother, which one's the daughter. We should be able to tell. That doesn't mean the mom has to wear a muumuu, okay? All like about not doing the muumuu thing. But there should be a difference between like my child and myself as the parent. And I just feel like that line is so blurred, and parents are just in ways like checked out. And I get like parenting, it's a full-time job. It is hard, and it's our job. Like, these are like all true at the same time. Like, and that's where I do feel like to have that access to that grace, from God, that he called us to be parents. He gave us these children. He wants us to do our job well. Like, he is in our corner, like he's our cheerleader, and he wants good things. So I think to just not, lose hope or be too discouraged if we recognize like, okay, I made mistakes here, right? Make them all the time. And I can get up and try again. Like, just keep plugging away, like moving forward, trying. And nowadays, one of the things, while you could say there's a lot of obstacles we have in parenting, especially in helping our children form healthy and beautiful sexual life, like developing the virtue of chastity and cultivating the truth of human sexuality, we have different obstacles, and one could say more obstacles than we've had in the past. But we also have a ton of great resources to counteract that. And we've highlighted, I feel like we've tried anyway, a lot on this show, by bringing in people who've created wonderful programs. Again, I know I mentioned her a lot, but Pearl and Thistle is just such a breath of fresh air, beautiful resource. She's the one that introduced us to this encyclical and brought it to our attention. So, there's just a lot of resources out there. In a way, it's almost like you don't really have an excuse, parents, nowadays. Like, there could be something in your local diocese. Someone's running a program. And if not, there's tons of online stuff. What were you going to say, Emily?
I was just going to say, I feel like, this being written in 95, the resources we have now are fruits of all of this, I would like to think, we were just talking, we made reference ahead of time before hopping on about all of the good work that Jason and Kristalina Everett have done, and how it has helped shape and frame both of our perspectives on chastity and theology of the body and that sort of thing. And so a lot of us are these generations of Saint Pope John Paul II. And I would like to think that a lot of fruits, perhaps even this podcast, if I might be so humble to say that, our fruits from his pontificate and all of these directives,
For sure. Yeah. There was a line in paragraph 45 that I think it just pulled at my heart. And it's this first sentence. It says, today this task of educating and their parents' duties encounters a particular difficulty with regard to the dissemination of pornography through the means of social communication instigated by commercial motives, and breaking down adolescent sensitivity. And that breaking down of adolescent sensitivity, it I don't know why, but it just made me so sad, Emily. It break my heart a little bit. And I just think of the young people that I see walk around with their phones and like their heads down looking at a screen, or the statistics you hear of teens and pornography exposure and pornography use at young ages. And I just think of this sensitivity, this littleness, like where are the adults? Like, we are robbing them of their childhood. They will have to deal with this crap at some point. Why are we rushing to that? Why are we rushing to that? And I just think that, I just think about this a lot. Like, I'm saying as parents, as adults, we are the ones that are responsible. Like, woe to us. I don't know, Emily. It's one of those things that makes me shake a little bit of oh my gosh, what are we doing to these little ones? What are we exposing them to because we don't want to get in an argument with them because they're not going to have a phone like their friends, or there's going to be pushback, or I don't know what it is, but it's we're just robbing them. And it's not even a phone or a screen necessarily, but just this overall lack of, and maybe the world that I'm connected to in parenting, or that I'm drawn to, I feel like I have a lot of like-minded friends who are just trying to protect our kids' littleness, really. And so if the world wants to tell me I'm sheltering them, go for it. I don't care. But my kids will be little, and they will play, and they will have imaginations, and they will have fun, and they will be sensitive to things they should be sensitive to. Right, Emily? And I know we've talked about this a lot, but even through children's books, that's kind of my rant, is when they're trying to introduce concepts that are evil, right? They go against God's design for our lives, for our sexuality. But they introduce these concepts to little people in very colorful, bright, friendly, this is just totally fine. Everything's normal. Normalizing things. And you're just breaking down their sensitivity. It's almost like we just don't have a conscience. We're not bothered anymore when we see two people of the same biological sex kissing. That should make you uncomfortable. That is disordered. If they are kissing in a romantic way, that is disordered. It should make you uncomfortable. And I'm just so aware, I think, Emily, I want to safeguard my own sensitivity. And I get upset when I notice I'm not as offended by something as I should be. But to think our children are not going to be as sensitive. What do you think?
I totally agree. That sentence hit differently when you just read it that second time. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I totally go for that. I think about sensitivity not only with, like you said, cell phones, pornography, that sort of thing, but just, I think a lot of times modesty, right? We are so desensitized to seeing people walk around virtually naked. And I think you and I have talked about this, perhaps maybe offline, I can't remember, but this, up until having kids, so I don't know when the shift came for me, but before having kids, I was very desensitized to this. And our oldest child is a little girl, about to be 6. And so different activities become, we're able to engage in different activities as she gets older and different things like that. And there have been a few, I won't say every time, but we'll be, signed up for something and these kids look like they're naked. And I'm not even talking about the adults. We can talk about that for a long time as well. But the children are dressed as if they're naked. And it's really, really hard for me. And I will say that in the instance that I'm specifically thinking of, I talked to many friends about this because it was bothering me so much. And it was a 6-week program that we were in, and I was not interested in pursuing anything further. But at the end of the program, it was very unusual, but our daughter said something to me like, "Mom, I just don't really feel," I forget the words that she used, but she's like, I don't think I really want to keep doing this, I think is the essence. And I was like, you know what? I agree with you. Let's just wrap up what we've signed up for, and then we'll move on. And I say this because you mentioned that as we get older, we're desensitized, but these little children are still sensitive, and we do have to protect that. And while she didn't mention why she didn't want to keep doing it, and I have no idea exactly what that reason was, but I also see it in different forms of life where these children are sensitive to things that they know are not right. And I'm just going to use, we're recording this as Halloween approaches. We drive through our neighborhood. We literally talk about protecting our eyes because my kids get creeped out by yard ornaments that are, these magnanimous things that are spooky. And we just talk about that so often. And so once again, I feel like these little children can discern good and evil. They may not be able to articulate what they're feeling, but we have to help them and explain to them in appropriate ways. Like, yes, these are things you might notice. It's okay to turn your head. And then talk about it's normal to be curious. Like, it's very normal, but we have to, pray for self-control to be able to not worry about those things if we see something that isn't that makes us uncomfortable. It's just, I just feel like you can see how sensitive they are when they're little, and Lord have mercy on when that changes. Like, you want to protect that.
Absolutely. Well, and it shouldn't change. That was my point, Emily. It's like
It shouldn't.
It shifts in that, like, our maturity and our responsibility and our awareness shifts as we get older. But I'm still to guard my eyes and my mind and my heart as the adult. Like, I am still prone to temptation, and I still want to have a sensitive conscience. And I firmly, absolutely reject, and maybe it's because of my previous life experiences as well, any insinuation that I am somehow a prude because I believe your butt and your breasts and your stomach and lots of other parts of your body should be covered when you are out in public. No, I'm not a prude. In fact, it's the opposite. I recognize the beauty of you as a created person made in God's image and likeness, whose body is profoundly good. And I recognize the fallenness of man and how we are tempted to use the other as an object for our own pleasure. That is why we teach modesty. That is why we cover, not because there's anything wrong with the body. In fact, the complete opposite. We cover because we recognize the profound goodness of the body. So I'm just don't want to hear anyone say, oh, these Christians, they're just prude, they're uncomfortable with sex. No, sorry. We are on the side of the creator of all of it. So we are not uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable with this topic at all. In fact, I would say you are more uncomfortable with the true meaning of it because you're just more comfortable with the pleasure, the surface level. If we want to go deep, let's have a deeper conversation. If we're just going to talk about boobs and butts, anyone can do that. That's not impressive. But I think you're right, Emily, like cultivating that sensitive nature, teaching our children that it's good to have a conscience. I think to affirm that is so important. Like, you are uncomfortable with this. Oh, this is perfect. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you mentioned this, Emily, because it just reminded me of a story. So weekly, I think it's like on Wednesday, I like turn another week pregnant, So Wednesday morning, I get home from the gym and my son greets me and he's like, Mom, let's watch the video. So we watch a video every week. It's like what to expect when you're expecting. And
Yes.
It's like a 1.5 minute video about like, because he always likes to know, like, what's the size of the baby? What fruit is the baby? And, like, how is it developing, et cetera. So we've been doing that. But the first week we did it, I forget how far along I was. Maybe 10 weeks when we started doing it. The image was of a woman. So it was, I'm like touching my stomach as if people can see me. There can. Okay. Emily, so it's like the profile, right, of like a woman's abdomen. Like down to her pubic bone, right? Because you want to be able to see the baby. So it's one of those images where it's like the human body and then like you can see the baby in her belly. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Hopefully I'm describing it well. Anyway, but his immediate response when it came on the screen was like, whoa, because you could see a lot of her body. Like you could see her pelvic area, And I looked at him and he was like, like kind of like what like he felt uncomfortable. And I was just like, And it like caught me off guard for a second. I know, Emily, it was so sweet. It caught me off guard for a second. We watched the video, and it was like he didn't know quite what to do with that. And I said, Max, I said, this is an image of, baby developing in like the mom's body. And I don't remember exactly what I said in that moment, but we kind of went about our day and had breakfast and then kind of went about the day. And later on in the day, I brought it up because I thought of the moment and I was like, you know what? I really want to affirm the recognition that he saw something that was very precious that maybe he shouldn't. Because we talk about, like, we see our naked bodies in our families, but like we don't see other people's naked bodies, So anyhow, we revisited the conversation. I said, hey, Max, I want to talk to you about that video we saw. And I said, I recognized, you felt a little uncomfortable with what you saw. And he's like, yeah. And I said, it's really great. But, when we're looking at scientific images, right, where we're studying the body as like the creation that God made it to be and how it functions, oftentimes when we are studying it, we look at images of the body, but they're not in a negative way. It's good because it's how we can learn about the body is to look at it this way. So it's actually a really good picture. It's not a picture that's making the body look the way that it shouldn't. And he was like, yeah, I understand. He's like, it just was surprising, I think is what he said. And I was like, I totally get that. So anyway, it was it was just a good teaching moment.
Amy, what a sweetheart.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, he really is.
What a sweetheart.
But yeah, I think, gosh, I'm just so like honing in on this sensitivity, this idea of cultivating sensitivity within ourselves and helping our children. Because I want him when he sees a picture, an image of a body, like, whoa, I'm taken aback by that. But again, the reason why Joey and I want to be the filter is because I want you to be taken aback, but I want to be the voice behind it to say, we're not taken aback because this is bad. It's because the body is so good and beautiful and made in God's image. Right, Emily? Like,
yes.
Because you recognize your reaction is God's gift. This is God working in your conscience to remind you of, this is something precious. This is something beautiful. And as a man, this is something you are called to safeguard and protect.
Right.
Emily?
I love that you describe him seeing it and looking at you, right? He's looking at you for, how should I react? Am I reacting right? Like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Even though he can't articulate that. He doesn't have the words, but you saw him, right? And I think this is very normal. I would just want to encourage all parents. I would like to think that in those moments, you're in the conversation, so you're kind of realizing what's happening, but it's very likely that it's not till later, as you're describing, that you're really pondering and you're like, wait a second, like that feels like something I should address. Go with that feeling. Answer that feeling. Don't be scared to bring that up. The child wants you to explain, even though they're looking for how to respond. How do we respond as a family? What's appropriate? They may not know. It's very normal for them to not know, but they want words to explain how they were feeling, and they probably don't know how to ask that. So just answer that feeling. That's a nudge of the Holy Spirit. It's so beautiful just to come back to that. Like, that's such a beautiful story. And so don't be afraid to revisit that. Just something so simple. It could be when you're getting ready for bed. It could be, just in those moments where it's one-on-one, it could be a minute or two of conversation. Don't be scared.
For sure. I didn't even think about that, Emily, but you're right. He did. He looked at me and you're right. It was with how do I respond to that? And like, it didn't even occur to me because, I know it's appropriate. It's fine. There was nothing wrong with what we were watching. But you're right. It was kind of like, it did catch me off guard in that, like, this is making you a little uncomfortable. Like, and yeah, same thing. Like, just, I forget when I even brought up, it might've been when we were laying in bed reading at night. I can't remember when I did. Maybe we were in the car, but yeah, just to bring it up again. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe my personality, but I'm like, I don't feel like I have an issue with that. It's more like, hey, we're going to talk about this. Remember this thing? Mommy did not handle this well, which I didn't say anything like that. I was just like, hey, I want to talk to you about this again.
Of course, because it's not that you didn't handle it well. And I think that happens so often. You you're realizing that the conversation is happening and it's all good. The conversation was good, but there was an instance that definitely could have used, more clarification just for him. And you recognize that later. And I think that's very normal for it to be recognized later. And so that we could talk all about tangents, but allowing yourself to have this space to have that time in your day to think about the day, right? Like we talk a lot about this, about just like noise in our ears, and like the noise in our ears or in our hands don't allow us just to ponder. Like, and it doesn't have to be all day. Like we're in the world, not of the world, but just allow yourself to have those moments where just you're reflective. Even if it's the next day, you could have brought it up the next day. It doesn't matter. Just don't be scared, and don't dismiss. Not scared. I don't think most parents are scared. I think it's just dismissive. Like, oh, they're fine. They're fine. That's very helpful for them, and they're forming their conscience.
Oh, I love that, Emily. You're right. Yeah, don't dismiss it. Like it's not a big deal. It's a beautiful opportunity to learn and to have a conversation. Yeah, that's a really good reminder. Really good.
You're modeling that for them in the future, right? So that they hopefully, the more you do these things, the more it becomes so comfortable for them too,
Yeah, for sure. Creating that culture of mom and dad are safe to talk to. I guess this is something I didn't think about until now sharing this story, but like, praise God that I didn't freak out or overreact. Like, oh, we turn our eyes. This is not, we shouldn't watch this. Like,
stop the video.
Yeah, I'm so glad I didn't have that reaction because that's not appropriate. It was not a pornographic image. Like, there's nothing wrong with the image and what we were watching. Nothing wrong at all. It was a beautiful display of the human body, of the baby growing in her belly, all of those things. So yeah, I didn't even think about that, Emily, but I'm so grateful that, my response wasn't off-putting, because you're right. He looked right at me like, how do I respond to this? And mom's freaking out. So this must not be good.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Okay. Oh, this is going to be fun to ponder for the rest of my day.
Me too.
And my kids are banging outside the door, so I'm sorry if you can hear them. But
no, I can't.
Okay, that's good news. Thanks. Okay, so we'll pick up again next week, guys, with the 5th section on the paths of formation within the family. So I'm sure it will be very informative. Thanks so much, Emily. This was really great. Have a good day.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.